Hello, friends, and welcome to ABN's Trinity channel for another episode of Islam and the News. Today is Friday, February 16th, in the year of our Lord, 2018, and it's always a blessing to have you joining me from around the world through satellite, through high-speed internet, and on many digital devices: Apple, Android, Amazon Fire Stick, Roku, the list goes on. Just go to trinitychannel.com/platforms. You'll be able to see all the different ways that you can watch these shows live every single week. Not just this show every single Friday, but also, of course, on Mondays, Colliding Worldviews and Rasha Christie's Truth Matters with many different apologists from around the world. And of course, on Tuesday, Pastor Joseph's The Cross and the Crescent. And if you haven't seen the commercials that we've been playing lately, there are about 12 shows that happen every single week now. Now, of course, not all of them are in English. There's a number of Arabic shows as well. So if you do understand Arabic, then you may want to tune in for those as well. Let people know about ABN's Trinity channel, where they can find all the English shows and a lot of great guests, great content. And again, here we have this healthy medium of loving Muslims because they're people made in the image of God, but at the same time, not sugarcoating Islam and not being ignorant of Islam like so many people out there, including the mainstream media, which is why so many people tune into Islam in the News every week to get the news stories that you don't get in the mainstream media, or at least the commentary that you're not going to get, and the follow-up information that the mainstream media would never give you. So thank you so much for continuing to spread the word about Islam and the news. Like every other Friday, I have never at a loss of news stories. Actually, I have always more than I can even present. Today, I do have another hour's worth for you, getting right to it. I have here from a Syrian international news agency: as ISIS shrinks, endgame for U.S. and Syria gets murky. It says the closer the U.S. gets to its original goal in Syria of defeating the Islamic State group, the murkier its endgame. The battlefield is shifting, as demonstrated by a deadly barrage of American air and artillery strikes on a shadowy attacker. The Pentagon insists it is keeping its focus on defeating IS, but Defense Secretary Jim Mattis said Thursday U.S.-backed fighters in eastern Syria faced a perplexing, quote-unquote, overnight assault by about 300 pro-Syrian government fighters whose nationalities, motives, and makeup he could not identify. A number of U.S. military advisors were present alongside local allied forces, and the Americans led a punishing response that other officials said killed about 100 of the assailants. So as we see that IS is continuing to lose territory, again, it is still a threat, and this is exactly the title of my next story here. This is UN experts: Islamic State still poses world threat. The Islamic State group still poses a significant and evolving threat around the world, quote unquote, despite recent setbacks in Iraq, Syria, and the southern Philippines that forced them to relinquish strongholds, UN experts said. Their report, the Security Council circulated Tuesday, said IS, quote, has lost its focus on conquering and holding territory, but is continuing to give prominence to external attacks. In future, it will focus primarily on a smaller and more motivated group of individuals willing to fight or conduct attacks, the experts said. According to the experts, the Islamic State group is now organized, quote, as a global network with a flat hierarchy and less operational control over its affiliates, with some members willing to cooperate with al-Qaeda networks to support one another's attacks. As a result of the changing threat, the report said, the fight against the extremist group is entering a new phase with more focus on less visible networks of individuals and cells acting with a degree of autonomy. Now, all the news stories that we've presented in the past, I've talked about it many times, that ISIS is different than al-Qaeda, and that ISIS just wants to spread its ideology. Yes, it takes credit for a lot of things, even some things that they don't actually have anything to do with. But again, they're just trying to inspire this mindset, this ideology to other people. So if it is something that they would do themselves or that they would approve of, sometimes they do take credit for stuff, but at the same time, they don't take credit for everything. That's why we need to listen to the different stories that come out about what they're taking credit for and what they're not taking credit for and all of that. Yet, again, even though they've lost much territory and, of course, many fighters and all these battles that they've had with coalition forces from different countries, they are still a threat. And speaking of ISIS, I have here from BNI, Utah High School, American flag destroyed and replaced with flag of the Islamic State. Now, this is also connected to the Daily Wire, and it says here, we do not believe this act was perpetrated by someone linked to ISIS, quote unquote. Mysteriously and without warning, a flag representing the nearly defeated ISIS appeared in place of the American flag at a high school in Hurricane, Utah on Thursday morning. Hurricane police have been working in concert with the FBI to determine why the flag had been raised. Ken Thompson, a spokesman for the Hurricane Police Department, said authorities don't know if the perpetrator was a student or an outsider. It says here, quote, officers have received the tips this morning, and they're following those leads. And so far, they haven't generated a credible lead, but tips can help us out a lot, he said. After hours of investigation and analysis by federal agents, authorities ruled out the possibility that actual ISIS affiliates raised the flag. Based on information we received from the FBI, we do not believe this act was perpetrated by someone linked to the Islamic State, Hurricane PD said in a statement. This investigation is ongoing, and investigations will continue to follow up on leads. So we see that even if ISIS were defeated today or tomorrow, the ideology has been passed on to other people. Even if this has nothing to do with an actual person, again, affiliated with ISIS, obviously that mentality, that mindset, or just the desire to make people think that there's a threat or whatever else is in the minds of other people. And of course, we are seeing news stories throughout the world about this, and we see everything that's happened with ISIS in the Middle East. We're still seeing certain places that are rebuilding. They're trying to get their lives back to normal, quote unquote. And we do need to continue to pray for the refugees who aren't coming to the West, but are just in the Middle East still, but are making their way back home. I have here from New York Times. It says, help the Yazidis, says ISIS survivor. 3 years ago, I was one of thousands of Yazidi women kidnapped by the Islamic State and sold into slavery. I endured rape, torture, and humiliation at the hands of multiple militants before I escaped. I was relatively lucky. Many Yazidis went through worse than I did and for much longer. Many are still missing. Many have been killed. Once I escaped, I felt it was my duty to tell the world about the brutality of the Islamic State. Yazidi women hoped that recounting our experiences of mass murder, rape, and enslavement would bring attention to the Yazidi genocide. We received sympathy and solidarity all over the world, but now what we really need is concrete action to get justice and allow our community to return to its homeland. Now, speaking of the Islamic State and speaking of Yazidi women, I have here from Daily Mail, Yazidi woman who was sold as a sex slave by ISIS confronts jihadist who admits raping hundreds of women and children and tells him, you will pay for the tears of these girls. Shireen, a Yazidi woman, was kept as a sex slave when she was captured by ISIS. As part of a BBC show, she revisits the Mosul house where she was held. The Yazidi woman reveals she attempted suicide 4 times to escape. Shireen meets an ISIS fighter who had 3 of his own sex slaves. He is challenged over why he joined ISIS, to which he reveals it was for money. He also admits to raping 250 women and children and killing 900 people. We actually have a video here. It's a few minutes long, so let's go ahead and watch this now.
This is my friend Shireen. She is from Sinjar. She's a Yazidi woman. I'm sure you're familiar with that community, and she has some questions that she would like to put to you in terms of your involvement and why you did what you did.
ليش التحق ب11؟
ما عندي حد، فقير.
إيه؟
ما عندي بس أنا. غايتي إني أريد فلوس أنا بالنسبة لي.
عندك مثلا تقدير كمعدل لعدد الأشخاص اللي أنت قتلتهم؟
على يدي ما يقارب هسه من قتلتهم وذبحتهم ما يقارب 900
900.
المهم من صار الاقتحام على سنجار، كنت أنت مشارك بالاقتحام؟
بس مو بدايته، الشطرات وهمية، بحجة إنه شنو الشرطة؟
إيه.
الشطرات وهمية، نشيل 30-40 نفر بالسيارة، نخليهم بصفحة، نخلص نخلي السجون، نروح نخليهم بصفحة نقتل.
هسه طبعا أنا من أقاربي اختفوا، ما عاد لهم وجود. يعني لحظات حط نفسك بمكان هذا الشخص اللي ذبحته، شنو كان شعوره؟
شعوره كان يقول لا تقتلني، ليش تقتلني؟ بيادم بيادم تقتلني.
How many women, how many children do you think you've raped over the years?
لهاي الفترة بقيت وياهم تقريبا يقارب تقريبا بالخمسينات. بالنسبة لنا كانوا صغار 15-16 سنة، ولا كبار تقريبا يقارب فوق 200 سنة.
What was going through your mind? Talk to me. Tell me what you're thinking when these girls are screaming for you to stop and you don't, you continue.
والله هي حالة ممارسة الجنس، يعني كل شخص ما يقدر ينفصل عن هذا الشيء، يعني هي إرادة قوية. يعني رغم ما شيء قد كانت تمنعني من هذا الشيء، يعني بس من أخلص وياها يعني أشوفها تمشي يعني ينكسر قلبي عليها.
لو ان قلبك طيب ما تاخذ 3 بنات وتغتصبهن يوميا.
صحيح هذا الشيء، بس يا تعرفين وضع الشاب ويعني
لا هذا ما تبرير. انت كنت تستمتع بهذا الشيء.
صحيح، بس بوقتها كنا مضغوط علينا. أنا مضغوط علي هذا الشيء، أنا مريض من عندي هالشيء. أنا إذا ما أسوي هذا الشيء.
اوكي هسه احكي لي شنو هو الضغوطات اللي صارت وشنو هذا الشيء اللي انراد من عندك. هسه احكي لي اياه، انا وياك وجه لوجه. انا وحده من ضحاياكم.
إذا ما أقتل محضر سلاح وراي يقتلني.
طيب افكر اني عندي مثل مشهور عربي، كما تدين تدان.
كما تدين تدان، صحيح.
مثل ما تزرع تحصد. انت مقتنع بي؟ بدك تدفع ثمن دموع هاي البنات، لثمن للي سويته. اخاف يعني.
أنا لزمت وأنتظر مصيري الموت.
Amar, our time with you is up. We have to leave. Is there anything else you'd like to say before you're taken back to your cell?
والله أحب يعني أشكرهم، يعني أخاف أنزعجهم من عندي فد شيء يعني.
No, I'm not scared of you. I don't think Shireen's scared of you. I don't think you have to apologise for that. It's just worth you knowing, you know, Shireen is a very, very strong woman and she's working on rebuilding her life and she has a future in a way that you perhaps don't. Thank you for your time, Amar.
Very brave and strong women indeed. I have here from Center for Human Rights in Iran, woman arrested for removing hijab in Tehran refuses to repent despite facing 10 years in prison. Says here Narges Hosseini, who was arrested for protesting Iran's compulsory hijab, refused to appear in court to face charges punishable by up to 10 years, including, quote, encouraging immorality or prostitution. Ms. Hosseini did not even appear in court to express remorse for her action. She said she objects to the forced hijab and considers it her legal right to express her protest. Hosseini's lawyer, Nasreen Sotoudeh, told the Center for Human Rights in Iran on February 5th, 2018. Hosseini, 32, has been in detention since January 29th, 2018. She was unable to pay the $135,000, that's US dollar, bail set by the judge presiding over her case. $135,000 for taking off a hijab. This is what is going on in countries under Sharia, or at least here Iran, which is full Sharia, of course Shia or Shiite, not Sunni, but nevertheless living under Sharia and the way that that controls your life in every way. Yes, it is the outward laws. Yes, many Muslims say, hey, Sharia is praying 5 times a day and all of that. Yes, it is. But the thing is that when Sharia is in place and there are people who are living under Sharia, they don't have freedom to do whatever they want. They have to obey by those rules as well. And this here is one more example of what happens when a country comes under Sharia and then a person bravely decides to not follow it in some way. Speaking of Iran, I have here from World Watch Monitor, Iranian Christian convert detained since before Christmas. An Iranian convert to Christianity arrested more than 2 months ago remains in prison in the conservative northwestern city of Tabriz, according to rights group Article 18. Ali Amini, known by his friends as Philip, was arrested by Revolutionary Guards at his workshop in the city on the 10th of December. His mobile phone and laptop were also confiscated. His elderly father was present during the raid and watched as his son was taken away. Amini is married and has 2 young children, 1 and 3. Every year, pressure on Christians increases ahead of Christmas, Article 18 reported, adding that 4 other Christians were arrested over the Christmas period in 2017 in Karaj, a city just to the west of the capital, Tehran. 4 UN officials recently expressed concern over 3 other Christians sentenced to between 10 and 15 years in prison last year. Their appeals were due to take place on the 4th of February, but were postponed. A 4th Christian, Kavian Falah Mohammadi, was also sentenced alongside them. Moving on to more persecution news, also from World Watch Monitor, Pakistani Christian says daughter 12 abducted, forced to convert to Islam and marry. A 12-year-old Pakistani Christian girl who disappeared in November was abducted, forced to convert to Islam and marry her abductor, according to her father. Alicia, daughter of Iqbal Masih, appeared in the High Court in Islamabad, Pakistan's capital, on Thursday, the 8th of February, where she introduced herself by a new Muslim name, but told the judge, Shakat Aziz Siddiqui, she had embraced Islam, quote, for the purpose of marriage only, a local newspaper reported. Her father has brought charges against a Muslim man named Qadir Ismail, who was recorded as age 20 on the marriage certificate, but who Iqbal Masih says is older. Alicia was recorded as 18 on the marriage certificate, but her father showed the police a copy of her birth certificate, which shows that she will not turn 13 until May. In Pakistan, men must be 18 to marry and girls 16. Formalizing a marriage between persons younger than this can result in a fine equivalent to roughly $500 US. Also from World Watch Monitor, Malaysia's reputation as moderate Muslim nation hangs by a thread. It says here, Malaysia is seen by most Western countries as one of the moderate Muslim nations, an ally to be cultivated and befriended in the battle against militant Islam. The country's prime minister, Najib Razak, was among one of the leaders to visit U.S. President Donald Trump in his first year of office in the White House. The honor came despite criticism from Malaysia civil rights organizations about the cloud of financial corruption accusations that hang over the Malaysian leader. A sovereign wealth fund he set up has been the subject of fraud investigations by the United States Department of Justice. But in the prosperous country of 32 million people, a rainbow nation of Malay Muslims, Chinese, Indians, and people of European extract and of many faiths, Najib's government is losing its veneer of moderation and appears complicit in backing hard-line Islamic strictures that target the country's minority faiths, including its Christians. And this is just one more country that we keep an eye on. Now, we've talked many times about all the Coptics, the Coptic Christians in Egypt who have been killed over especially the last few months. I have here from World Watch Monitor as well, church built to honor beheaded Copts, but families still waiting for bodies' return. Now, this story just came out talking about, of course, the many Copts who were killed in January of between armed militants on 29th of December 2014 and January 3rd, 2015. Of course, this picture right here, very famous. People have seen this. It's been all over the internet. And yes, now a church is built in the honor of these people. It says, in a special day for the Coptic community of Minya province, Upper Egypt, as a new church was inaugurated this morning in Al-Our village in remembrance of 20 Egyptian Copts and one Ghanaian Christian beheaded by IS on the Libyan coast 3 years ago today. In the early morning, a mass was held at the new Church of the Martyrs of Faith and Homeland by Bishop Bavnotios. The church was packed with Christians who traveled to Al-Our from various parts of Minya, where the murdered Copts came from. Although the inauguration was not an official event, the governor of Minya did not attend. It still received extensive media coverage, partially because the construction of the church was funded by the Egyptian government. Security forces were present throughout the event, and we do have a video for you highlighting this as well. So let's go ahead and play that for you now.
This is Al-Owa, an agricultural village in Minya, in rural Upper Egypt. Painters put the finishing touches to a new church in remembrance of the 21 Christian men beheaded by Islamic State on the Mediterranean shore of Libya in 2015. Video footage of those beheadings was seen all over the world after Islamic State posted it online. The church will be inaugurated tomorrow on the 15th of February, the 3rd anniversary of their deaths. As part of the ceremony, the bodies of the 21 men were due to be reburied in this big coffin here in the chapel, but the families are still waiting for their loved ones' remains to be returned to them. Ahead of the inauguration, World Watch monitors spoke to Malak, whose son was killed, but first with Fifi, the daughter of one of the victims. She now works in the church bookshop.
يعني بالنسبة للكنيسة فرحانة إن بابا اسمه اتذكر في السنكسار بقى لهم كنيسة باسمهم، حاجة فخر وشرف كبير. بس ويعني برضه في كنيسة بابا يعني الواحد حاسس إنه أصلا في بيته يعني.
في الحقيقة يعني لما استشهدوا احنا ما عرفناش هل هم رموهم في البحر أو رموهم في أي مكان، فاحنا ما كناش في الحقيقة نعرف أي حاجة يعني.
The land on which the church stands was donated by the village. The funds to build it came largely from the Egyptian government, which donated the equivalent of more than $500,000. That's unique, as the building of new churches is normally highly restricted in majority Muslim Egypt.
ما كانش المكان ده يتبنى فيه كنايس. وبرضه نشكر الرئيس السيسي اللي هو حس بقوة إيمان الشهداء دول، وناس بتحب بلدهم وتحب وطنهم وتحب دينهم، فلذلك أصدر قرار ببناء الكنيسة دهية على اسم الشهداء، شهداء ليبيا.
When World Watch Monitor visited, the church was full of builders and noise, but after tomorrow, it may become a place of pilgrimage. Despite the sadness of the loss of the 20 members of their community, one Christian came from Ghana, the event has boosted the faith of the local Copts. Pride seems to be their dominant emotion.
أنا في الحقيقة لما اتعرض الفيديو وشفت الفيديو وشفت ابني وسطيهم، أنا شكرت ربنا وحمدته لأنه عرفته وصل فين. لما عند الاستشهاد نطق وقال يا رب يسوع، أنا زادني فخر، اتبسطت.
أولا في البداية كان الموضوع صعب علينا نشوف يعني بابا كده يعني، بس ربنا بيبعت تعزياته في الوقت المناسب، وطبعا الواحد حاسس ان هو فخور بحاجه زي كده يعني، فخور ان بابا بقى شهيد يعني.
شفناها عباره عن افلام بس، لكن الموضوع اتجدد وزاد الايمان في الكل، لان الناس دي الشهداء اللي هم عاشوا وسطينا.
لما الكنيسه حلوه زي كده اتبنت وبقت باسمهم، تقول لنا ايه احساسك؟
أنا في شعر في حاجة أحسن من كده يعني. حسيت إن الأطفال الصغيرة لها حب في الاستشهاد من أجل اسم المسيح.
Moving on to the ongoing refugee situation I have here from BNI, dozens of refugee resettlement agencies to be shut down as Trump slashes the number of refugees allowed into the country. Refugee resettlement agencies are preparing to shutter more than 20 offices across the U.S. and cut back operations and more than 40 others after the State Department told them to pare their operations. From Reuters, it says the slated closures, which are being reviewed by the State Department for final approval, follow President Donald Trump's decision to dramatically reduce the number of refugees that will be allowed into the United States in 2018. The State Department has said that the drop in refugee numbers from the 110,000 ceiling set by the Obama administration to 45,000 for 2018 means the country no longer sees all of the 324 resettlement offices that were operating at the end of 2017. This year's cap on refugees is the lowest since 1980. The offices run by private nonprofit agencies that can contract with the U.S. government provide a range of services to refugees, from assisting them in finding housing and jobs to helping them navigate banking, medical care, school enrollment, and other complexities of life in America. Opponents of the resettlement program say it is more costly to resettle refugees in the United States than it is to give aid to displaced people overseas. And this is another thing that I've brought up in the past too, is that as ISIS loses more and more territory, ISIS is defeated, well then what's going to happen with refugees at that point? I've presented news stories about refugees who are still in the Middle East going back home. Well, what happens to the refugees who come to the West, who come to America, who are getting free housing, free food, free everything? If you're over 65 years old, you automatically qualify for Social Security. A lot of people are saying, hey, this is hitting us on multiple fronts. It's hitting us on financial front. It's hitting us on, of course, a front of the amount of people who are coming here with an Islamic worldview, who, again, even if they just want freedom, are still seen by the political Islamists as part of the Ummah that will be on their side. Is changing the voting environment politically. I mean, who are all these people going to vote for? Obviously, the people who promised them the most free stuff and continued free stuff, who continue to like to give the handouts and all of that. Now, we do need to take care of refugees. We do need to take care of the hungry. We need to take care of those who are in need of different temporal things. But at the same time, we also need to be in mind of people's spiritual needs. And the spiritual need part, which is technically the biggest part of it, isn't getting done, because as Leo Hohmann, the author of Stealth Invasion, who we've done a couple shows with, he has said, hey, these agencies have been told and tell their employees, don't proselytize, don't share the gospel, don't share this info or that info, just give them free stuff, and hey, get the money that you're promised because you're helping them out. So this is something that needs to continue to spread. People need to get educated about it. And we'll be back in just a couple of minutes after our commercial break for more Islam and the news.
As it is ABN's mission to go and make disciples of all nations, our discipleship program has spread to several different languages.
Şeyler geçti ve her şey yepyeni oldu değerli kardeşlerim.
Reach out to them. He wants you to break up of every division.
تساءل يا رب ماذا تريد أن أفعل؟
مقدس چرا درباره ایمان مسیحی چی صحبت میکنه؟
Khi đi đến đó để mà một cái gọi là
olup İsa Mesih ile yürümedikten sonra
Any man be in Christ, he is a new creature.
كم المدمنين توقفوا عن الإدمان.
خواهم بود نه خواهم آمد. خواهم بود یعنی هست.
Khi bà trở lại Việt Nam thì thường thì bà nói rằng
kötü alışkanlıkların, şeytana olan hizmetin, günaha olan düşüklük.
We started out with these languages, but coming soon are even more. Stay tuned to see these programs come to ABN.
ABN Set TV Ministries is now a part of Amazon Smile. This means that any purchase you make on their website, Amazon will donate 2% of your total purchase to ABN with no additional cost to yourself. All you have to do is sign up at smile.amazon.com, and after you signed in to your regular Amazon account, just search for our ministry by typing Aramaic Broadcasting Network. Then click Select next to our name, and you're all set to support us. Set up your Amazon Smile account today by selecting Aramaic Broadcasting Network as the group you want to donate to. Be a part of Amazon Smile and help ABN Set TV Ministries grow by having Amazon donate to us whenever you make a purchase on their website.
Welcome back to Islam and the News. I'm always here with, again, a full hour's worth of news stories that you won't get in the mainstream media. I have here next from WND, France looking at tax to subsidize mosques, also wants to reform Muslim council limit who can train imams. It says here French President Emmanuel Macron already has signed into law anti-terror legislation that gives security services the authority to shut down places of worship if they are fostering extremism. And French police can search terrorist suspects' homes and demand identity documents of suspects at borders. The moves were prompted by the 2015 terrorist attacks by Muslims that killed 130 in Paris. Now Macron wants to move much further down a road that wouldn't be permitted in the United States because of civil rights protections in the Constitution. The French president wants to tax Muslim food, reform an influential Muslim council, and restrict what other countries can do to finance mosques or train imams in France. The details were documented by Soren Kern, a senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute. Kern noted Macron's plan is vague and short on details, but appears to involve three broad pillars: determining who will represent Muslims in France, delineating how Islam in France will be financed, and defining how imams in France will be trained. He said the plan includes reformation of the French Council of the Muslim Faith, which acts as a go-between for Muslims and the state. It represents 1,500 mosques. I have here from Leo Homan, Islamic outreach, quote unquote, coming soon to a public library near you, compliments of the Muslim Brotherhood. Centerline, Michigan, population 8,200, is a small town surrounded by the larger city of Warren, where thousands of Muslim migrants have arrived over the years, brought there by resettlement agencies, industries, and universities. That being the case, the Muslim American Society is co-sponsoring with the city of Centerline a Get to Know Your Muslim Neighbor event at the public library on Saturday, February 10th, which just took place recently. Now, this is Dawah 2.0, okay? We have seen the Dawah tables where Muslims are giving out free Qurans, they're giving out free Islamic literature and all of that. This is the next step after the whole interfaith dialogue thing that I've talked about a ton here on Islam in the News, and the ridiculousness of this when they get an liberal Jew, usually a universalist Unitarian pastor, Christian, and then they get a Muslim. And it's all about agreeing that Islam has so much in common when they never even mention the Abrahamic fallacy, which I've also mentioned here many times as well. Now, here is a video that was mentioned in a local news story about this. And this is the kind of event that you can expect, not if you're living under Sharia, but if you're living in the West, in areas where they want to Islamize and make Islam acceptable. And again, this is Dawah 2.0. Check out this video.
100 people in the East gathered at a local mosque today to learn more about culture and religion at the Meet Your Muslim Neighbor event in Greenville. WNCT's Tamara Scott has more on why the Muslim community is opening their doors.
Some people criticize us because they don't understand our religion. And some people call us terrorists because they don't know fully our religion.
Today, people of all walks of life came together at the Al-Masjid Islamic Center in Greenville. Some eager, others doubtful, but most simply curious about the Islamic religion.
My question is, can you tell us more about the call to prayer?
But not everyone is open-minded.
I have a friend who said, oh, be careful going there. You don't know what you're going to find. I was like, what?
Jean Fitzpatrick says afterwards she has a better understanding of the faith, but also the people around her.
I don't know anything about the Muslim religion. I don't know much about anything. I didn't know the difference between Islam and Muslim stuff, so it meant a lot to me to even see that it was offered, and it was a wonderful experience.
Spokeswoman Summer Bodwin says that's the idea of their event, to extinguish misconceptions and the idea of grouping people together.
One Muslim representing a whole group of Muslims, just as one Christian representing a whole group of Christians. That's not who we are. and that's not who they are, and that's not how any group is. You can't base it on a group. You base it on the individual.
Abdul Rahman says he sees how cruel the world can be, so he hopes people leave today with a more peaceful understanding.
We should all treat people equally, even if you're Jewish, Muslim, Islamic. It doesn't matter. We should all treat everybody equally.
In Greenville, Tamara Scott, 9 on your side.
Okay, number one, if you live in the West and you don't know the difference between Islam and a Muslim, the last place you need to be going is to a mosque and to listen to a guy wearing an Al-Azhar hat telling you about the awesomeness of Islam and why it fits so well into the West and why Sharia is so compatible with the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and all of that. Now, the young men at the very end there talking about treating people the way you want to be treated. That sounds kind of like the golden rule, or maybe even the closer to the platinum rule that Jesus gave of, hey, love your enemies. Neither one of these came from Muhammad. And this is the thing that people need to understand. We see many moderate Muslims in the West, but there is no moderate Islam. These young men who, it would be great if all people who said they're Muslims thought the same way, of treating others the way that you want to be treated. If that was an actual orthodox teaching of Islam, that would be all right, but it's not. If you read the oldest sources, the primary sources, that which define Islam as far as we know, just as we read the New Testament, the life of Jesus, to define Christianity, these Western ideals, these Western things, these Judeo-Christian principles of loving your neighbor and all of that. This is not from, we just talked about this the other day, this is not from Islam. When the word love is used in Islam, we need to define that according to the Islamic worldview. Allah only loves good Muslims. Allah doesn't love all people, like the Yahweh of the Bible. And we read in the primary sources of Islam, in Sahih al-Bukhari, we read in the Hadith, things that Muhammad said himself about in Umar, talking about dying as a martyr for the love that you have for Allah, or for the love of martyrdom, for the sake of Allah. These are the things that are talked about. That doesn't sound like Christian love, Judeo-Christian love, a Western American sense of love, peace and tranquility. And that's why these words need to be defined for people. And as you would guess, these events, these interfaith dialogues, these Meet Your Muslim Neighbors events, these are just eaten up by the ignorant people, or I should say ill-informed, who don't know about Islam. And again, we need to look at the primary sources. Yes, we encourage you all the time, love your Muslim neighbor, but don't let them define Islam. Because the jihadists, the Muslims in the East who are driving and paying for all of the Islamization that is happening in other countries, they don't have the worldview of these young men, which that is the idea that needs to spread. That's not the case. Love your Muslim neighbors, but again, don't let your modern day constitution-loving Muslim define Islam, because they simply don't. Just like I'm not going to tell you, hey, go talk to this Christian guy because he says he's a Christian if you want to know about Christianity. Read the Bible. Read the words of Jesus. We have to do the same thing when it comes to Islam. What did Muhammad say to do? Study the life of Muhammad, and you will be much more educated in all of this stuff here. And that's what we talk about, of course, here on ABN Stream Channel all the time. I have here from the Geller Report, at Vatican, Erdogan asks Pope to help lead concerted and continuous international effort to fight Islamophobia. I thought this was a fake picture right here. It says here, not only has the Pope morphed into the preeminent emissary of Dawah, he has accused victims of Chile's most notorious pedophile of slander, an astonishing end to a visit meant to help heal the wounds of a sex abuse scandal that has cost the Catholic Church its credibility in the country. Evil. Why do Christians stand for this? And Pamela is pointing people to this news story that was put out by Robert Spencer over at Jihad Watch. And yes, these are actual pictures of the Pope meeting with Erdogan. Now, I have here from WND, which continues on with this story. It says, prophecy watchers, why are Pope Turk leader meeting over Jerusalem? Debate rages over biblical ramifications of future alliances and world events. Says the two rock stars of biblical prophecy with divergent views of future world events sat down for a 3-hour debate over whether Islam or the Vatican is going to rule the world, leading to the cataclysmic war that results in the return of Jesus to straighten things out. Then last week, the Pope welcomed to the Vatican an Islamic world leader attempting to reestablish the caliphate with himself in charge. Now they agree that the meeting of Pope Francis and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan could have world-shaking consequences, whoever is right. Erdogan's spokesman, Ibrahim Kalin, said the future status of Jerusalem was high on the agenda and called for an end to racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, quote unquote, and discrimination. The meeting has been hailed as promising global peace, quote unquote. Taking notice of the unprecedented meeting in the Vatican between one of the world's most powerful Islamic leaders and the head of the Catholic Church, two famous prophecy watchers, New York Times bestselling author Joel Richardson and Bill Salus, believe the summit has, quote, biblical significance and potentially explosive political consequences. Now, this book that we have a picture of here, very interesting title here, Mystery Babylon, Mecca or Historical Debate. I'm going to have to get hold of Joel Richardson, have him come back on Colliding Worldviews and do a show on this new book that just came out. And I have mentioned here a number of times, and this is probably something that I needed to continue to let people know about, is the mindset of Erdogan. I have here, this is actually a news story that came out from the European Post in December of 2017, but the story title is Erdogan like Boumediene, the Islam demographic challenge to Europe. Listen to this quote right here by Harari Boumediene, who was actually a president of Algeria. One day, millions of men will leave the southern hemisphere to go to the northern hemisphere. And they will not go there as friends, because they will go there to conquer it. And they will conquer it with their sons. The wombs of our women will give us victory. This is the thing that we hear from the Algerian president back in 1974. This news story says the European Union is ignoring a demographic time bomb, a recent rush into the EU by migrants, including millions of Muslims, will change the continent beyond recognition over the next 2 decades, and almost no policymakers are talking about it. Now, continuing on with Erdogan, I have a picture here that I've shown many times before. This came out in 2016 in the summertime. It says Muslim scholars worldwide declare Erdogan to be the supreme leader of the entire Muslim world. And this picture here, 17.2, is a picture of Erdogan next to none other than Yusuf al-Qaradawi. Again, what do you see there? The famous Al-Azhar hat, and the man who is looked to as the modern-day theologian of the Muslim Brotherhood. Yes, Muslim scholars worldwide declare Erdogan, the suit-wearing Turkish president, of being the leader of the entire Muslim world. And I have here from Syrian International News Agency, Turkish Republic is continuation of Ottomans. Now, this is actually said by Erdogan. The Republic of Turkey is a continuation of the Ottoman Empire. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said on February 10th, this was just 6 days ago. This is the Republic of Turkey, just like our previous states that are a continuation of one another, is also a continuation of the Ottomans. Erdogan said in remarks he made during a commemoration ceremony to mark the centenary of the death of Ottoman Sultan Abdülhamid II at the Yildiz Palace in Istanbul. Of course, the borders have changed, forms of government have changed, but the essence is the same. The soul is the same. Even many institutions are the same. Erdogan added this is why Sultan Abdülhamid is one of the most important, quote-unquote, most visionary and most strategic-minded individuals that made his mark in the recent 150 years. Sultan Abdul Hamid II, the son of Sultan Abdul Mesid, died in 1918 and was the 34th Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. So, this is being implemented in the West. Not only do you have Erdogan out of Turkey, you have the Meet Your Muslim Neighbor days, where again there's definitely an agenda behind this. The video that you saw a few minutes ago, I mean, Christians should be showing up. Christians who have studied Islam, Christians who have a heart for Muslims to reach them with the gospel. That is who needs to be filling these events, not ignorant, ill-informed people who, again, don't know the difference between Islam and Muslim, should not be going to those type of events to learn about it. And they also need to be informed about the Muslim Brotherhood and what they're doing here. I have here from Creeping Sharia, Muslim plan to infiltrate U.S. schools, book publishers, and force Islam on American students. Check out this video.
The reasons for seeking accommodation and the ways and means and the fact that we can seek accommodation in the public schools is curricular inclusion. How do the schools talk about Islam? How do the textbooks talk about Islam? Do they talk about Islam? Do they only mention it in a brief way as a civilization that sort of came and went? Or do they mention it as an ongoing part of history? We also, and this is what I'm going to conclude with because Sister Sharif is going to continue with it, is work through PTAs and local school district textbook selection committees and keeping our eyes open for community and school events which touch Muslims, putting out publications and so on and so forth, and getting into the system which makes the decisions about what children learn in schools.
You have to get involved to the point where they're going to, in a positive way, so that they respect you, they respect your faith, your culture, and they actually would invite you to be involved with them in the process of educating these children in a way that teaches about your religion, not tries to convert them to Islam. Because many parents come to the school system with the idea that I might get some convertees here. And I can recommend that you would get involved in the following facets of school systems. One is the social studies book adoption committees, the social studies curriculum advisory committees, the human relations committee, the gifted and talented programs, the minority achievement programs, the literature committees, and the superintendent's advisory committees. I think that if we do all these things, we can have a permanent effect. History books, social studies books, world cultures books. I am involved in a 1.5-year project as part of the Muslim Education Council to look at every single sentence that exists in all the books nationwide about Muslims, Islam, the Arab world, even the pictures that are presented. To pull those things out, look at them, see what's wrong, rewrite what's wrong about them, and then have those checked by scholars, and then submit that to the book companies and ask them to change it.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has enabled us to start working within the area of the public schools and the Muslim student concerns in that area.
Them as well.
Education is one of the most important areas that Muslims have to address. And while our objective, our final objective, is not just to become part of the system that we experience now and that we see, our objective, our final objective, is to create our own Islamic systems, and not only create Islamic systems for Muslims, but to look at all the other people who are sharing this country with us as potential Muslims. And if we look at them as potential Muslims and feel that we have the obligation, which Allah has told us, to try to bring them into the same style of thinking, into the same way of behaving, into the same objectives that we have, then we have to have some way that we can communicate with them and some way we can work with them. And in that long-range process of making America Muslim, all of America Muslim, then we have to have some actual short-range goals. We have to have some way of dealing with them and know how we're going to deal with them and in which ways, and be very calculated about it, or else we will not accomplish our goals.
And this is why you stay tuned to Islam in the News every single week. Folks, You get the videos that you will never, ever get in the mainstream media, especially when the mainstream media is calling the local care office to come and speak on any story that has to do with Islam. And of course, you're going to get that same agenda, that guys wearing suits rather than carrying weapons, but having the same end goal, wanting the world to be under Sharia. This is the plan for the West, to Islamize it, to make Islam acceptable in the West. And again, every time they feel oppression, pushing back. Hey, don't oppress us, don't oppress us. And then what happens? Advance. They feel pressure, don't oppress us, don't oppress us. What happens? Advance. So they're working to advance, and they're working to get rid of any opposition in any way. And of course, what do? They name call, right? They create Islamophobia. They call you intolerant. They call you an Islamophobe. They call you a racist. They call you a bigot. And again, all of these different names break down, as I've mentioned in my videos on the Muslim Brotherhood and also on unveiling the facts of Sharia, which you can find on my Vimeo channel. I only have about 8 minutes left in the show. I want to get to a story which some people may have been looking up a lot the last 24 hours. Other people may not know anything about it, and is about a shooting, a very unfortunate event that happened here in America, in Florida. First thing I want to do is play a 1-minute video clip of President Trump's reaction to this event.
Yesterday, a school filled with innocent children and caring teachers became the scene of terrible violence, hatred, and evil. Our entire nation, with one heavy heart, is praying for the victims and their families. We are here for you, whatever you need, whatever we can do to ease your pain. I'm making plans to visit Parkland, to meet with families and local officials, and to continue coordinating the federal response. We are committed to working with state and local leaders to help secure our schools and tackle the difficult issue of mental health. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you very much.
What is he referring to? Again, he's referring to a shooting that happened just in Florida yesterday. I have here from the New York Post, deputies called to suspected shooter's home 39 times over 7 years. Yeah, obviously this guy had issues. It says before Nicholas Cruz carried out his mass killing at a Florida high school this week, police responded to his home 39 times over a 7-year period, according to disturbing new documents. Details about the calls to Broward County Sheriff's Office obtained from police records by CNN were not immediately available, and it was impossible to determine if all involved Cruz. Also from the New York Post, I have here, it says FBI admits it didn't investigate tip on alleged school shooter last month. The FBI was warned last month that Nicholas Cruz was an armed psycho who might shoot up a school, but it didn't bother investigating. The agency admitted on Friday, that is today. It says a person close to Cruz called the agency's tip line on January 5th and reported the 19-year-old had a desire to kill people, erratic behavior, and disturbing social media posts. And there was potential of him conducting a school shooting, the FBI said in a statement. Now, here from WND, media ignoring one crucial factor in Florida school shooting. Guns, depression, trouble cited, but the key information not yet disclosed. Here we go again. A horrific mass shooting occurs. Everyone is in shock and grief. Democrats blame guns and Republicans. Pundits urge the public, if you see something, say something. And everyone asks why. As information about the perpetrator emerges, a relative confides to a newspaper that the troubled youth, quote unquote, who committed the mass murder was on psychiatric medications. You know, those powerful, little understood, mind-altering drugs with fearsome side effects, including suicidal ideation and even homicidal ideation. Yet the predictable response from the press is always the same, not only a total lack of curiosity, but disdain for any who ask the question, as though connecting psychiatric meds to mass shootings is pursuing a conspiracy theory. Here's a good way to tell whether or not something is a conspiracy theory. If it's true, it's not a conspiracy theory. Now, there are obviously people who are grieving right now Yes, real people have died. There are parents who sent their kids to school yesterday and they did not come home. People are grieving. There are people who need to be prayed for. And again, this is an ongoing thing that we see. But there are other things that are involved here too. Number one, how many guns are in America? I have here a news story that came out in October of 2017. It says it's difficult to calculate, but in 2015, the Washington Post estimated the number of firearms nationwide at 357 million. That's already a staggering figure, but it becomes even more so when compared with the country's population, which at that time was 317 million. So this is something that needs to be factored in here. There are more guns in America than there are people. And it would be one thing if there were no guns, and then the government started saying, okay, here are some guns, and all of a sudden, like events like this happen. Oh no, let's take them back. There's a problem. We're not going to let guns be out there. But we're exactly the opposite right now. There are more guns than people, and this is a very unfortunate incident. Hopefully it never happens again. Hopefully a parent will never have to go through this again. At the same time, how many millions of guns, as I just said here, over 356 million, close to 357 million, didn't shoot anyone yesterday, weren't used to shoot anyone. And the reason why I have to say weren't used, because the guns don't shoot themselves. Guns don't have minds. Guns don't have a sin nature. It is merely a tool that can be used for target practice, for hunting, or someone just says, hey, in America, you can own a gun. Well, then you can do that. If you're a responsible gun owner, if you have a way to keep the gun away from children, away from irresponsible people, well, then it's okay. There's a right to bear arms in America. And a news story that I have here as well is from Daily Mail. Florida gunman says demon voices told him how to pull off school shooting, and police reveal they were called, again, out 39 times to his family home before his mother died last year. Folks, this spirit of death and suicide and killing and murder, this isn't from the Lord. This isn't from Jesus. This isn't anything that Jesus taught in the New Testament. But we see this, throughout the world. Why? Because we have a fallen nature. We are sinners. We aren't sinners because we sin because we're sinners. Unlike the Islamic worldview, which teaches that we're born with a clean slate, we're born good, we don't have a tendency to sin, and that is not the case. And that's exactly why Muslims throughout the world need the gospel. Now, we look at the life of Muhammad. He didn't have this Judeo-Christian love your neighbor type of attitude. Let's look at the earliest sources. Ibn Ishaq, page 106. This is the earliest biography of Muhammad. So I read it, and he departed from me, and I awoke from my sleep, and it was as though these words were written on my heart. Now, none of God's creatures was more hateful to me than an ecstatic poet or a man possessed. I could not even look at them, I thought. Woe is me, poet or possessed. Never shall courage say this of me. I will go to the top of the mountain and throw myself down that I may kill myself and gain rest. So I went forth to do so. And then, when I was midway on the mountain, I heard a voice from heaven saying, O Muhammad, thou art the apostle of God, and I am Gabriel. We see in Al-Tabari, volume 6, page 68, he, Muhammad, said, I had been thinking of hurling myself down from a mountain crag, but he appeared to me as I was thinking about this and said, Muhammad, I am Gabriel, and you are a messenger of God. Then he said, recite. I said, what shall I recite? He took me and pressed me 3 times tightly until I was nearly stifled and was utterly exhausted. Then he said, recite in the name of your Lord who created. And I recited it. Then I went to Hadijah and said, I have been in fear for my life. When we read the earliest accounts of Muhammad's experience and afterthought of his visitation from Gabriel, quote unquote, the same angel who in the Bible told Mary she was going to bear a son, the Lord, the God incarnate, this same angel visited Muhammad, and then Muhammad wants to go and commit suicide. We don't see this anywhere in the Bible, that someone was visited by an angel and wanted to go kill themselves or wanted to go and to kill others. This is not from the Lord. We don't see this in the life of Muhammad. We don't see this in the actual orthodox theology of Islam. We need to get the gospel out to people. We need to love our Muslim neighbors enough to share the gospel with them. Muslims will die, and they will die without the gospel if the gospel is not given to them. It doesn't matter if you want to give a Muslim a gospel tract, if you want to give them a Gospel of John, an entire Bible in English or Arabic, but Muslims need the gospel. And I want to skip here to picture 20.2. This is the case when it comes to this whole thing with guns, when it comes to any world religion out there or ideology that hates people and says it's a virtue to kill people because they don't agree with your religion or they don't agree with whatever you believe. Cain killed Abel with a rock. It's a heart problem, not a gun problem. It's not a vehicle problem. When someone says, well, I hate these people, I'm going to go get in a vehicle and I'm going to go drive and kill people, that is not from the Lord. That is not something that Jesus would tell his followers to do. It is a heart issue. It doesn't matter if you're using a gun, if you're using a car, if you're using a knife, if you're using any type of weapon to actually hurt someone because you hate them. The sixth commandment is you shall not murder. And we see people murdering people with their hands, with different types of weapons, and even something you wouldn't even consider to be a weapon. And Jesus said, if you hate someone, you're a murderer. Jesus raised the bar even higher. And yet, Jesus, the God-man, the eternal Son of God incarnate, fulfilled the law that we couldn't keep. He died a guilty man's death. He rose from the dead 3 days later in glory. This is the good news, that people throughout the world, no matter what they call themselves now, whether it's atheist, agnostic, Muslim, Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, Buddhist, Hindu, whatever, when you realize that you are a sinner in need of a Savior, you've done bad things, you need to repent and turn from that. And you need to repent and put your trust in the Lord Jesus Christ, not the Jesus of the Quran, not the Jesus of Mormonism, not the Jesus of the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Jesus who is found in the New Testament. If you have not read that, then ask someone for a New Testament, ask them for a Gospel of John, just tell them, I want to know what Jesus said. I want to know who Jesus is. And of course, Jesus is visiting Muslims in dreams as well. If you cry out to the Lord, if you want to know who God truly is, if you want to know who Jesus truly is, ask the Lord to come to you, to let you know who he truly is. Ask for a Christian who is around your area to providentially make contact with you. But seek the truth, and you will find that in the Lord Jesus Christ. He said he is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through him. Friends, love your Muslim neighbors, but don't let the political Islamists define Islam or downplay or water down any threat that it actually is, that Sharia actually is to any country that is not under Sharia right now. People need the gospel. People need the truth. And that is why you need to stay tuned to ABN's Trinity channel every single week, every single Friday for Islam and the news. Get this video and share it with people because they need to be informed. And we will see you next Friday for another episode of Islam and the News.